2 extensive months had passed since James departed for his military training. Amelia endeavored to divert herself from the escalating emotion she had long contended with. The silence of the home was intolerable in his absence. His absence created an unsettling void that she was unable to dispel. Despite her attempts to disregard it, Amelia experienced an inexplicable need for him. She recognized it was inappropriate, yet she was powerless to control her heart's response whenever she contemplated him. Please subscribe to my channel to enable the continuation of captivating, genuine stories like this one, and ensure you watch this video in its entirety, as the narrative promises to be exceptionally intriguing. On the day of James's coming home, Amelia was agitated, wandering about the house, uncertain of how to occupy herself. The prospect of encountering him again elicited an unforeseen surge of emotions, causing her heart to race with a blend of exhilaration and apprehension. She had underestimated her longing for him, and now that he was back, the situation felt different. Amelia positioned herself at the window, gazing toward the driveway, anticipating the sound of an approaching vehicle. The minutes seemed to elongate into hours, as every small sound sent her heart racing, until finally she recognized the distinct sound of tires on gravel. She recognized James's automobile immediately. Her breath halted in her throat as she approached the door upon opening it. He stood before her. James donned his military outfit. He appeared taller and more defined. His absence had transformed him, and she could not deny its impact on her. She had always perceived him as the boy she had nurtured, but now, before her, he was indisputably a man. "Amelia," he whispered quietly, his voice resonant. His gaze upon her caused her heart to accelerate, his eyes fixed on hers, brimming with emotions that reflected her own. James Amelia responded, attempting to regulate her breathing. Her heart raced, and her pulse accelerated as he approached her. Impulsively, James extended his arms and embraced her. Initially, Amelia's body stiffened, but she subsequently surrendered to the comfort of his warmth. The robustness of his physique and the aroma of his cologne felt simultaneously familiar and novel. She missed him profoundly. His embrace was unlike anything she had previously experienced, and her thoughts raced. Amidst her emotional turmoil, "I yearned for your presence." He spoke into her hair, his voice laden with emotion. Amelia's breath halted as she inhaled his essence, the intensity of his presence inundating her senses. Her body appeared to respond to him, and she could not disregard the warmth intensifying between them. "I also missed you," she replied in a hushed tone, her voice trembling. "Yours." Her hands reflexively traversed to his chest, pressing against him. She sensed the firmness of his muscles beneath his uniform, the tautness of his physique, and the obvious heat between them. James retracted slightly, his hands positioning to cradle her face. He scrutinized her with a fervor that induced a chill along her spine. Amelia's heart raced, her body reacting to the proximity she experienced. Her breathing grew shallow as he leaned in slightly, his face so near hers that she could sense the warmth of his breath on her lips. A brief wait ensued, during which neither party moved, both ensnared in the unarticulated tension that had accumulated over time. Fire engulfed Amelia's body. Her skin tingled with James's proximity. She sensed the intensity of his gaze on her lips, and her heart appeared to thump more forcefully in her chest unexpectedly. James leaned in towards her, his lips gently brushing hers at first, cautiously, as if assessing the situation. Amelia felt a constriction in her throat as she breathed. Her body quivered slightly from the touch. His lips were warm and soft. The kiss, however tentative, conveyed a promise that both were too apprehensive to recognize. prompting Fia to raise her hands and grasp the back of his neck, drawing him nearer. The kiss intensified, becoming more fervent, as if they both feared that withdrawing would cause the moment to elude them. James's hands descended her back, drawing her nearer, his body pressed firmly against hers, the fire between them intensifying with each fleeting moment. She found herself unable to think or resist. Everything about this moment felt profoundly right, despite its inherent wrongness. Her hands glided down his chest, feeling the taut muscles beneath the fabric, and she sensed his heartbeat synchronizing with her own. Every inch of her body responded to him. His lips, the movement of his body against hers, and the way he touched her. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw before entangling in his hair. He emitted a soft groan against her lips as she deepened the kiss. His hands moved to her waist, drawing her even closer while his lips traveled from hers, grazing her jawline and trailing down her neck. Amelia shut her eyes, inclining her head backward to provide him greater access. Her respiration occurring in brief, superficial intervals. The feeling of his kisses against her skin and the warmth of his body in proximity to hers was nearly overpowering. She sensed her loss of control. Overwhelmed by the intensity of her long-suppressed longing, Amelia James murmured his voice. His hands, robust and imbued with a desire that reflected her own, descended along her hips, prompting a small cry from Amelia as she sensed the warmth of his touch permeating her garments. Amelia opened her eyes, establishing eye contact. In his presence, her heart quickened, her body ignited. She recognized the peril. It ought not to occur, yet she was unable to restrain herself. Their closeness and the intensity of their emotions were indisputable. "Are you certain?" she murmured. Her voice quivered as she gazed at him, her heart heavy with yearning, yet tinged with trepidation. She was uncertain of her readiness for the repercussions, yet the attraction between them was too potent to dismiss. James's hand delicately guided her face, his thumb gliding across her cheek. He expressed his certainty in a gentle manner. He had never been more certain of anything, and with that, he kissed her again, more deeply and forcefully. This time, Amelia reciprocated. As her body pressed against his, Amelia relinquished all that she had restrained. Their kisses intensified, and she recognized that their relationship had irrevocably transformed. Yet, in that instant, with his hands on her body and his lips on hers, she found herself unable to regret this moment. This relationship was all-encompassing. For once, Amelia permitted herself to experience her emotions fully, without fear or reluctance, as the intensity between them escalated. James's powerful arms inundated her senses, as if he never intended to release her. His touch was simultaneously delicate and urgent, a blend of desire and longing that elicited waves of exhilaration throughout her body. Amelia's hands glided down his muscular back, tracing the contours of his shoulders and the firm planes of his physique beneath the fabric of his uniform. She could scarcely fathom his presence, that the guy she had yearned for was finally before her, kissing her and stroking her with such fervor that the kiss intensified once more, this time without reservation. James's hands commenced to explore cautiously, as if assessing the environment. His fingers delicately followed the contour of her waist, sliding under her shirt to touch the smooth skin of her back. Amelia inhaled sharply into his mouth, the sensation of his contact transmitting a spark of energy throughout her body. The warmth beneath her skin flushed her. She could no longer restrain herself. She required him and necessitated this bond that transcended mere physicality. She withdrew slightly, her breath coming in uneven gasps as she stared into his need-filled eyes. However, there was an additional element present as well, with an intensity that mirrored her own emotions. "I have desired this for an extended period," she murmured, her voice quivering with both yearning and trepidation. "But is this truly the course of action we ought to pursue?" James halted briefly, his hands remaining gently on her hips. His gaze softened, and he gestured to Amelia, gently caressing her cheek with his thumb. "I have also desired this. I have attempted to suppress it, yet each time I contemplated you or found myself apart, you remained in my thoughts." Amelia's heart swelled at his comments. She had attempted to persuade herself that her emotions were merely transient, but his admission of shared feelings rendered everything tangible. They always had a desire and connection, so she wasn't delusional. "I wish to avoid regret," she mumbled, her voice scarcely audible as she inched closer to him, her body naturally leaning into his, yearning for proximity, yet a part of her hesitated, apprehensive of the repercussions. James bent down, his lips lightly grazing hers in a gentle kiss, as if to assure her that they would not regret it. He spoke in a quiet and earnest tone. "This feels appropriate, Amelia. We can go gradually. Allow events to unfold naturally." Amelia nodded, her body quivering with anticipation as she drew nearer to him. She sensed his lips descend to her neck, his warm breath eliciting thrills along her spine. Her hands traversed to the nape of his neck, entwining in his hair, drawing him nearer. She sensed his lips on her skin, initially tender, then becoming more fervent as his hands ascended her sides. Her heart accelerated, her body responding to his every touch. The yearning that had long been latent was now overwhelming her, and she could not restrain herself. She required him. She required his touch and presence in a manner she had never previously permitted herself. James's hands descended, outlining the contour of her hips before drawing her nearer, his body pressing against hers. Amelia sensed the palpable chemistry between them as their bodies appeared to instinctively synchronize. She inclined her head backward, granting him enhanced access, and he seized the opportunity, kissing her more profoundly. She experienced a surge of warmth as his kisses traversed her throat, while his hands positioned themselves at the small of her back, drawing her even nearer. Her breath was shallow as the passion between them escalated. She sensed his heart racing, the cadence of his breath mirroring hers. Each touch and kiss drew them further into the moment, into a realm where nothing else held significance. Amelia's hands ascended to his chest, her fingers awkwardly manipulating the buttons of his military shirt. She desired his proximity. She required physical contact to ascertain the reality of the situation. She undid the buttons and lifted the shirt off his shoulders, revealing the well-defined muscles beneath. Her gaze traversed his form, her hands extending to outline the contours of his chest and arms. She was astonished by his appearance, which exuded strength while yet evoking familiarity, reminiscent of the youngster she had once known and loved, now evolving into the man before her. James observed her with a blend of longing and reverence. He bent down to kiss her once again, his hands gliding over her back, his fingers caressing the hem of her blouse. Amelia exhaled gently as she withdrew, her gaze meeting his. She perceived the hunger in his eyes, yet also a profound affection that caused her heart to flutter. "I desire you," she murmured gently, the words escaping prematurely. She could halt them. The susceptibility in her voice caused her cheeks to redden, yet she could not retract her feelings. She desired him. She desired this moment above all else, and the fear that had previously restrained her dissipated. James's demeanor softened, and he pressed his lips on her forehead. "Are you certain?" he inquired, using his voice. His voice was filled with tenderness, as if he was seeking her acceptance, even though his body language clearly suggested otherwise, I'm sure. She murmured in response, drawing him nearer. Once more, there was no hesitation or doubt. She yearned to experience his lips, his hands, his entirety. She desired to immerse herself in him. As their kisses intensified, the surrounding world appeared to dissolve. The sole reality was the warmth of their bodies, the softness of their skin, and the fervor of their passion. Amelia's hands traversed his body, investigating and perceiving all that constituted his identity as a man. James, filled with enthusiasm, explored every contour of her body, drawing her closer and relishing the sensation of her skin beneath his touch. The tension that had accumulated between them over the preceding months was now dissipating. Amelia had yearned for this moment, and now that it was occurring, it seemed more profound and tangible than she had ever envisioned. Their connection was beyond the physical. It was profound, emotional, and visceral. As their kisses diminished, Amelia leaned her forehead against both, breathless, their hearts beating in synchrony. She felt secure in his embrace and simultaneously utterly exposed, vulnerable in a manner that was both daunting and exquisite. Amelia softly remarked, her voice filled with astonishment, "I never anticipated this occurrence." "Neither did I," James said, his fingertips gently tracing the contour of her jaw. "But I am pleased it occurred." Amelia grinned, her heart brimming with ineffable emotions. Uncertain of the future, she found solace in James's embrace and the warmth of his kisses against hers. The significance of their connection and shared love was all that counted.